This is the Business Growth Hacks Podcast, presented by Beefy Marketing. Here's your host, Andrew Brockenbush.
What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for being here every single week, listening to this podcast, hanging out with me and John. Sometimes just John when I skip, sometimes just me when John skips. But we're here every single week for you guys, making sure we're bringing amazing value. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Wingman. Wingman's your all-in-one marketing and sales automation software, which helps you streamline your communication, automate your processes, and grow your business. Check them out at trustyourwingman.com. Super, super cool. All right. We've got an incredible guest lined up for you guys, and we're going to kick it off with an icebreaker. All right, Carolyn, if you could redesign any commercial space, real or fictional, which space would it be, and what would you change about the space?
Well, I think that what comes to me is a favorite Thai restaurant that I love the food, but every time I'm in the space, I'm just pretty disgusted. I'm pretty disgusted.
Oh, yeah.
And I always think, if they would just clean this up a little bit, just spruce it up, how many more people would come here? And I know they get a lot of people because the food's good, but wow. So yeah, I'd love to take that on.
Small details. One thing I hate, like as you bring that one up, I hate when I walk into, there's a lot of restaurants that end up being in like shopping centers and they have the square ceiling tiles. I hate it when I see like the dust build up on those ceiling tiles. I'm like, that's disgusting. If that looks like that, what's the kitchen look like? And it might be the best food in the world, but it's like those small details make all the difference. Anyways, John, what do you got, brother?
I'm going to go with a fictional space because something has always bothered me. On the show The Simpsons, Ned Flanders has a business called the Leftorium. Well, the door is on the right side of the Leftorium, and I think that's just wrong. It should be on the left side. So I'd move the door over to the left side.
That's a great point. That's what a simple change that could make all the difference.
Yeah. Know your audience, right?
Know your audience.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Know your audience. Mine's a little bit more wide spectrum, I guess. I would completely reimagine banks. And I think some banks are starting to do this or take note of this, but the bank experience as a whole is very transactional. Yet from a brand messaging standpoint, a website standpoint, branding perspective, they always try to communicate that they're people-centric and they care about their customers, they care about their clients. Yet the office spaces, their buildings, are always still very, very transactional. Even now, even worse now, with like you walk into these buildings and it's like a teller tucked way in the back and a couple of automated machines in the front, and they're like, oh yeah, just do what you got to do right there and you can go. Or if you need to talk to a banker, you can schedule a meeting. Or if you really, really can't use the machine, I'll send you to the very back of the bank to talk to the teller. That drives me nuts. I trust these people with all of my money, all of the things, all that I work hard for. I give it to those people. And it feels such like a cold transaction. I can't pick up the phone and talk to somebody locally. Like that annoys me because I feel like the branding is completely mismatched from the customer experience. If I were to reimagine it, I would probably make them more like co-working spaces, maybe with the banking aspect. So more of a communal space where people can come in and have the space for, hey, we have a conference room in the bank that you can use for your networking meetups. And like, we want you to spend time in our building, right? We have a small desk space. If you want to come in and drop by and work from our office, you don't have your own office. Maybe you're not in the place yet in your company where you can afford to have your own building. Drop by and use our space. To me, that would completely change the banking experience to more of a relational experience and less of a transactional experience. So that is the space I would reimagine. What are y'all's thoughts?
Nice.
That is awesome. So I have to throw in this little caveat. In my what I do now design life, I worked in designing banks years ago, 30 years ago. That's where I met my current husband. We were designing banks together, working for a company to design banks. And there were a few, they were mostly credit unions actually, that were rethinking this. And they were community-driven credit unions, and their transactions were concierge type stations and things like that. So And with the, not to go off on another tangent, and with the need for physical banks has gone down so much to stand out. And if they're going to keep physical banks, to stand out and create that community that you're talking about, as you were talking about, it's like, wow, that is a way, if a bank wants to continue to have a brick and mortar, to make it more, to more than just a transaction. It's more community. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, a lot of these bigger cities like Nashville, for example, or Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia, the cities that have like a huge tech focus, they're building these like business incubators, these places where entrepreneurs can go and grow their idea so that it is highly profitable. Imagine if banks were the forefront of that.
Yeah.
They make money off of lending you money.
Yeah.
Why not put me in a space where I can benefit from what your product is in a way that doesn't feel like you're selling me a service, but you are offering me a platform or a launch pad to my business success. And if I thrive, if I grow, if I'm successful, well, that's more opportunity for the bank at large. Like, it just seems like a no-brainer. Like if I was an executive of a bank, or if I was going to start a bank, I feel like that would be my primary focus, would be creating those kind of spaces. 100%. So,
well, and the aspect of
fun.
you can be having a meeting and think, man, well, could we even fund that? Well, I don't know. Let's go downstairs and ask the bank.
Exactly. We're right here. Like we've got a guy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. It also, I think it opens the door for bankers who are typically just sitting around, maybe making calls on existing accounts or whatever, to have more of an interaction with people in the community and the business owners and entrepreneurs in the community in a way that says, hey, what are you thinking about? What are you doing? What are your struggles? What are your pain points? Oh, we can solve that with a business line of credit. We could solve that with a personal loan. We could solve that with, this creative small business lending program from the SBA. Like things that a lot of business owners, I feel like, are too afraid to even approach because they don't know what to do or where to start. Why don't you educate me and empower me to make those decisions, which long-term, again, benefits the bank? I could go off on a whole tangent all about banks. This is not even a bank podcast, but here we are.
Here we are. We're talking about space.
Here we are.
That's it.
Our guest for you guys today is quite an incredible person. First of all, Rain's from Texas, and you just can't beat that. I mean, that's what they say. That's the one thing about Texans is, we hate everything that's not Texan. It's not completely true, but we sure do love, and we are sure proud of our home state. So Carolyn Boldt is not, that's right. We love Texas.
We love it.
Carolyn is not only a passionate visionary, but also a firm believer that the spaces we inhabit play a pivotal role in our success. In 2004, she, alongside her husband, embarked on a journey by co-founding Crossfields, an Atlanta-based design build firm. Carolyn's wealth of knowledge and expertise is a true treasure chest, and we're honored to have her on our podcast today. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into the hot seat questions, before we get into the good stuff and talk all about our spaces, can you tell us a little bit about how you even got into this world in the first place?
How did I get into this crazy world we're in? So I had a wonderful experience when I was around 14 years old, that my father was with NASA. You heard that I'm from Texas, and my father was with NASA, and he worked in advanced preliminary design, which meant he worked on things 20 years before you'd ever see it in the public. And he was literally working on the zero gravity Earth orbiting space station. So this was the 60s. Yes, I have a little age on me. So, but the NASA brought in an architect to work with him, and he was working on his thesis. And the thesis was the interior design of a zero gravity Earth orbiting space station. Because NASA understood it, they were going to send people up in space for years, months, years, whatever at a time. They had to make sure they weren't going to go crazy, because there is a psychology of space. There's a psychology of your environment, and how you act and how you feel and what you do has a lot to do with your surroundings. So his name was Roger, and Roger would come over and have dinner. He was displaced from Florida, so he'd come over and have home cooked dinner with my mom a lot. And my dad and him would sit around in the living room and just talk about this they just philosophize. And I was fascinated. I was just fascinated, just in the middle of it. And it inspired me to make me understand that I could impact people's lives by designing space. And I was already I wanted to be involved in art, and I thought I wanted to be an architect, but I realized that I wanted to be on the interior, not the exterior. And so then I went on to school. I went to the University of Texas. I got a degree in interior architecture, and then went on to and I have only worked in commercial design, because commercial design, and we can talk about this from a business, that commercial companies understand that the interior design of their space is going to impact their employees. It's going to impact their clients. It's going to impact their potential customers or not. And they look at it as a piece of their business requirement. It's not a luxury. It's a business requirement, and it's part of their marketing, especially if it's about attracting patients. Like, we work right now in the holistic healthcare arena. We transitioned over to that in about 2011, 2012, and we do virtual design all over the country in the small healthcare arena. And that brick and mortar is critical to their space, or to their business. That brick and mortar is critical to their business.
Yeah.
Right.
I like how you put an emphasis and importance on the fact that it's not just a luxury, it's a necessity. Because I remember when I first wanted to get an office space, one of my business mentors at the time was just like, I don't think he was giving me a hard time to discourage me, but more so to just make sure I was making decisions at the right time, in the right timing, things like that. But I remember always talking about how it was so important to me to have like a really, really cool space. And he was just like, man, like, you don't need a space. You don't need a space. Like, that's not really the best place to put your money, which might have been true at the time. But I remember being like, I realize I'm bougie. Like I understand that. Like, I realize I have a little bit of, and I also realize that some of it's ego based, if you want to call that. Like, there's something about having a cool space that you're proud of, that you want people to feel like there's an association with your name and that space. And so for the longest time, I wouldn't get an office because I just felt like I kind of like honed in on that thought. Like, okay, maybe it's just my ego thinking I need to like do this for me. And I'm not doing it for the right reasons. I'm doing it for me because like I want to appear bigger than I am. I want to appear like I'm cooler than I am, that kind of thing.
Right.
About 2 years ago, though, I decided like, if I want to grow the company, we were coming up on 10 years. If I want to grow and scale this company in the way that I would like to, I want a space that we can call home, like not just a co-working space, which I don't see anything wrong with that. That's where we started, and we thought it was a lot of fun. But I was ready for my own space, and I remember touring so many office spaces. One in particular, I remember one day in particular because it's kind of what landed me in the space that I'm in today. We toured this like retail. It's called a retail office space. It's like one of those strip centers that's like nothing but like shared offices. And it just felt so old, like the super weird like carpet tiles that smelled kind of moldy, the squared ceiling tiles, like the coffee stains. Like, I mean, just those. If you could pick up on that imagery, like it was that experience where you walk in a business and I don't think, wow, these guys have their shit together. Like, these guys are kind of a big deal. Like, no, I didn't feel that way. I felt like, oh, this is a company that's scraping by. This is a company that's looking for the cheapest way to do things. And I just couldn't make that decision. And I was like, man, I really am like egotistical. Like, I am too bougie. Like, but for some reason, like there was this like significant pull that was saying like, no, like this can't be the thing that's tied to your image, because I've worked so hard over the last decade to make sure that our online presence and our online brand and the relationships we have with our customers is just so superior and so top notch. This office does not align with that. Like, I would rather continue to have a co-working office and have one little space that looks amazing than have this giant space that looks old, outdated, and tacky. And so that same day, the guy that toured me that building was like, well, I have these brand new buildings that no one's ever been in before. We just built it. They look like, they literally look like houses. They're like office condos. And he walked me through the space, and it was like immediately like the look, the smell, like I was like, wouldn't this be cool? Like, I remember all the lights were off, no lights were on. Space was empty. It was just a, empty canvas. And I was like, wouldn't it be just so cool if we could do this? Like, that'd be amazing. And I was like, well, what's the rent on the space cost? And it was like $2,800 a month. And I was like, like, we're thinking like $1,000, $1,500. Like, that's what we can afford at the time. And you're telling me this is double like what our top, level was. And I like prayed about it. I went home and like really crunched all the numbers. Like, I just felt like called by the space. And fortunately, the guy was very generous with his business. And what he did for us was gave us a 3-year structured deal with an option to buy, where basically he started the rent off at a very, very fair rate. I think it was like $2,200 a month. And then he scaled every year in the 3 years until we reached the market value, which was $2,800 a month. Within the first year of being here, we bought the building. 1 year of being in the building. So I say all of that long talk to say that the space does matter. Like, it matters way, way more than you realize. And that's the reason I'm so excited about this conversation with you, is that like, sure, like I've shared my story, but like, I want to hear it from an expert. Like, I want you to tell me, why is it so important for businesses to invest in their spaces?
Well, if they couldn't hear your testimony, then I don't know if I can add much more to that, but I will do my best. Well, we were talking about it just having a psychology of space, and you just described it. When you walked in the space, you felt different. And we all, whether we like it or not, and if you're in sales and marketing, you know this, we make decisions with our emotions more, and then we back them up with logic. So, but those emotions are what drive us. There's what make us think, what make us do, what make us motivated. Let's just talk the psychology for a minute of true documented psychology when people don't have enough sunlight, right? And they actually get really depressed. So that's easy for people to understand, but that also is relevant to what you just talked about, where places just feel out of sorts. Even if the place is nice, but it's really messy, and it's cluttered, and all of those things create, it's like your brain has trying to take too much in and it's trying to sort it. The other thing that's huge is that, just think about when you dress for success. I mean, that was a big deal when I was in school, right? Now people dress however they want to, but you still feel differently when you just got your hair done, you've got a new outfit on, you feel good. Everything inside of you actually comes out better, and everything does. So when we talk about spaces, now we do, like I said, doctors' offices where they are attracting and trying to retain patients. And so we look at hospitality design and retail design, and I'll talk a minute about that. But, let me talk a minute about that, and then let me go over to just office space where I'm assuming, and I'm going to ask this question, do you have clients come to your space?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So part of you just said it, your image on your website, your image everywhere. It's very important, if people are coming to your space that are potential clients or clients, that all of that is congruent. Because you're right. If they see this wonderful website, they found you first, let's say through some kind of search, and they decided to call you up and you talked to them about coming in, and they came in to meet you. If they had walked in and seen, like I talk about that Thai restaurant, or they'd walked in, that would not have helped elevate what you were selling to them. So that's why it's a marketing expense. It is an important marketing expense. It does not have to be expensive. It just has to be very intentional. So the lighting, the color, the finishes, the decorating part is important. So I was going off on a tangent about retail design and hospitality design. So retail design is the first impression. So think about when people walk into a store. When you walk into a store, if that store's first impression environment doesn't match up with what you're going into that store to buy, then there's a disconnect, just like in marketing. You confuse, you lose, you kind of disconnect, and they lose. We don't know how much business they're losing because of that. But when you go into a retail establishment that's perfectly aligned with what their marketing message is, whether it's a Walmart, I talk about this in the classes I teach, whether it's a Walmart that's the low price leader, everything intentionally about Walmart was designed for you to be congruent with a low price leader. If you walked into a Walmart and it looked like a bougie designer store, they wouldn't match up with that line, right? And the other way around, you go into a designer store and everything intentional. So, and I can go into a bunch of little details comparing the two, but it's very, very purposeful. So that is your retail design. Hospitality design focuses on a culture that you're trying to create so that you keep people wanting to be there and keep coming back over and over again. So it has more to do with once you get past that front impression and you're into the space itself. Hospitality design is more in alignment with people that are trying to have an office space. So it's more internal. It's both your patients and internal. It's both your clients and internal, but it deals a lot with the internal because you want to retain your staff. You want to attract your staff and you want to retain it. So you need it to be effective. I'm also going to go off on one more tangent, and that it's not all about the design. It's not all about the interior finishes. It's also about the function of the space. So very, very, very important that it's got to function first. So we adhere to form follows function, which means it has to function well first. Because if things don't function well, that's a psychology of frustration. And it's a psychology of lowering efficiencies and not a psychology, but it lowers efficiencies. So you've got to make it function first. And then you've got to think about how the form or the three-dimensional space feels. So it all goes together.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not designed very well. If you can't work in the space, then it's not designed.
Yes.
I love that because I remember from design school, one of the things they taught us is form and function working together is what design is. It's something beautiful that works, not just something beautiful. That's art.
Yes. Something beautiful is just art, but you're right. So, and you're working in I'm assuming when you talk about design school, you're talking about web design, graphic design, all of those type of things. Yeah. And just, it's so coherent together because that first impression, the psychology of colors, psychology of shapes, psychology of imagery, psychology of all that you take.
Sound, smell, touch.
Smell is one that we don't talk about a lot, but it's
especially
huge.
In the
it's
web,
one of the biggest.
Especially in the digital world. You don't have it a lot, but it is
huge. You don't have to think about it. Yeah.
There are companies out recently. There. I'm sorry. Let me just talk about smell real quick. There are fine hotels and things like that. You know this, I guess. Yeah. They have their own signature scent. Do you know? So that when you walk in, you smell it. Nice resorts and things like that. And there's machinery Mercedes around you that are putting out that scent. Yeah.
That stuff's so cool. I mean, even like big theme parks now are starting to put little scent machines in different places in the park to heighten your senses to get different food items, to get different, to do different experiences. I mean, it's crazy. I have always been so fascinated with the psychology of life in general, but like space and design. I mean, obviously we're more of the digital side with branding and things like that, but it's like you said, it's so cohesive. It's like recently, and I'm going to ask this question in a second about like where you can be cheap and where you should spend all your money. But one of the things I recently had noticed was I was up in the team space and I was sitting in one of the team members' chairs and I was like, this chair really, really sucks. Like, but I'm the one that made that call. Like I didn't realize how much money it would cost to furnish a space. And we don't even have a giant space. It's relatively small. It is not cheap. And so I was like, oh, chairs, like $99 Amazon chairs should cut it. No, they do not. And I felt so bad because I had never really taken the time to like sit in one of their chairs, like put yourself in their position seat for a second, put yourself in their shoes. Like I literally was in one of their chairs and I was like, yeah, we're buying all of you guys new chairs. Like these are garbage. Like I'm over here in my $400 chair, like living large. And I sit in one of their $99 Amazon chairs and I was like, wow, you're a real jerk. So it's just like every element though. It's like, sometimes people focus on like, oh, that's a really, really pretty lobby chair. It's like, yeah, but is it comfy? Does someone want to stay in that chair and spend time with you? Yeah. And there's a time and place for chairs where you want them to get up a little bit faster. Like maybe a restaurant, you don't want them to get too comfortable. You need as many people coming in and out of that restaurant throughout the day as possible. But in a lobby, for example, you want them to feel comfy and at home.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Or you don't, meaning you just want it for show. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's all, you just have to know the purpose. You have to know who your audience is. Right. Does this sound familiar? Who is your audience?
100%.
You're designing to your audience, right? You design to your audience and you design to that criteria that you're trying to bring your audience toward.
Is it more important to focus on your staff or your clients, do you think, with your space?
Well, in our situations, we focus on both as equally as we can. Because in doctors' offices, especially, we work in the holistic healthcare. And so it's still a choice, as opposed to, an urgent care situation where you just go because you need to go. But you're making choices is which doctor I'm going to go to, or if I'm even going to go to these, especially holistic alternative type doctors where it's really a choice. And you're walking in and going, do I trust this? Do I know, like, and trust what I'm getting into? So if you don't have that in your first impression, you're not going to have a business. So the clients have to have that importance. But then once you think about the operations of the business, the efficiencies and the happiness of the staff will keep your business flowing. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to say one is more important than the other. Now, if you have, I'm just saying this. Now, you have a business that you don't have to have a lot of people come to it, and that's not part of what you're doing. You can. Use the example. Say you meet with your clients once every year. I'm thinking about different types of companies that you'll meet with a client once every year. We just go into the front part, into the conference room. We never go back and see the back area. I don't know what the back area is like. They're just putting their their face up front. But if you want to keep staff these days, people don't want to, you've got people coming into your office. You got to make it fun. You got to make it enjoyable. You've got to make it work. And,
yeah, definitely. I was just wondering what your take would be on it. Because to me, I agree. I think it's a balance. It's what are you trying to do? What's your end goal? We got to work backwards from there anyway, because otherwise we're not going to get there, So
exactly.
I think that's awesome.
Just like you guys do. So, what's our goal? What's our end goal? What are we trying to
accomplish? What's the end goal? It seems like that's a theme on every episode. Like, where are you going? Like, what is your primary focus? What's your goal? Who's your target market? We could just like marketing 101, right? So obviously, like I kind of alluded to the fact that whenever we got this space, there was a lot of expenses that I did not realize. I didn't know that I was going to paint my walls a different color because I thought it looked cooler. I didn't know that we were going to have to acoustically treat several of the spaces and buy the most expensive fake plants on the planet. Like, it's like, why are fake plants so expensive? Like, you can make a whole business out of that. Like, there's so many little things. And I was like, we just spent $50,000 and we have 1,500 square feet. Like, how is that even possible? Like, it just happens fast, right?
Right.
So I'd like to know about that a little bit. Like, what things do you think, and I realize this is a little bit subjective, but what things should you spend a lot of your money on, and what areas can you maybe be more budget, budget focused, I guess?
I think that, let's just make sure first that you do what you said, where your staff is comfortable and they're in, some quality chairs or whatever, especially if they're going to be sitting there a long time. That's a real, you're right. It becomes important. And, when you're first starting out, you may not have the money to do it. So just plan to do the best you can and replace it. I know we tell a lot of our startup doctors that the style is very important of your furnishings. When if you think about your environment, you're doing this work to create this environment, and the style of your furnishings is your part of your design elements. And you can buy some good quality chairs that still look like they were made in the 80s, still today, right?
Yeah.
So for someone who's trying to attract new patients or new clients into their space, you need to look fresh and updated and things of that sort. So what we tell them is that do the best you can to spend good looking furniture and then replace it. Because residential furniture, stuff that you would get like at Target and IKEA and Wayfair and some of that stuff, although Wayfair keeps going up in price too, that's not made to be in a commercial environment for very long. So that's kind of what we talk about, where you're not really, you got to make sure it's quality enough that no one's going to fall and break themselves in it, but you don't necessarily have to be at the level of commercial. So you just said it, commercial quality. So your everyday residential furniture may cost $100 a chair, where your commercial one may cost close to $1,000 a chair. So you have to just know what you're going to be doing. So that's kind of an area that you play with. And the other thing, we just think you can do a lot with paint and lighting.
Yeah.
A whole lot. So I don't know how the lighting is in your office, but to be able to vary the lighting in a space so that it's not just a wash of your Walmart overall, not criticism to Walmart. Yeah. They're very much on purpose and they make a lot of money. So don't hear me there, but just knowing that there's that variation of lighting changes the mood a lot. So the lower the lighting, the quieter, the softer everything is, the higher the lighting, the more energy it is. And the same thing with paint and paint color. So that's the two things that we see can make a huge difference.
Yeah, the lighting, it's so funny that you bring that up, because that is a point of what is the word? Point of
contention?
I don't know.
Contention?
That's the word I was looking for. In our office, I like the lights on in our office.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it makes us look like we're like in business.
We're awake.
We're awake.
I like to work in the dark.
John likes to work in the dark. He's he does a lot of production, like video editing. So it makes sense that he's in a dark space. Our team space, which is like one of the first spaces you see when you walk in our office, it's like the first office to the left. They love the lights off. They just they would rather lamps be on, and everybody in that room is like for that. They're like, turn the overheads off, and I'm like, I was like, it looks like y'all are sleeping. Like, it bothers me personally. But I also realize it's like 1 against 3. So it's like, if that's how they feel more comfortable, I don't want to take that away. I wish we could find some common ground where it's like, it doesn't look like we're closed for business.
Yeah.
But
we could do some motion detection lights. So if somebody walks in, maybe the overheads come on, but trigger it from in the lobby. Yeah.
So
what are your thoughts on that?
Does your staff work on computers all the time?
Yes.
So are they choosing that because it helps their vision and from eye strain and some of that? I've heard that, like you said,
maybe, but
like John, you work in video and you need it.
I like it dark because it's easier for me to see the screen and I don't have to squint at details and stuff like that. It makes the video pop more for me, easier to edit.
The other 3 are just like, it's too bright. It's like, it's too bright in here. Like they just want like more of a cozy, moody.
So how old are vibe. How old's your staff? What's their age range?
2 of them are in their like mid 30s, and one of them in that same room is probably 24. So yeah, younger group.
Yeah, I think there's something to do with the younger group too. To be honest, and not that you're that old, Andrew, but
sure, yeah. But,
do you remember? Do you remember? Let me tell you a story. So that's how old my kids are. So I have grandkids, right? So I remember when the new retail stores for that age were coming out, when my kids were in middle school and high school, like the Abercrombie and Fitch and the Hollister.
Yeah. Hollister
was like, you walk in Hollister, I'm
dark.
going, I can't see anything. Dark. What color is this?
Did we walk into the club or the clothes store?
I know. They felt like clubs. They did. They felt like clubs.
That was the whole point. Yeah.
So some of it is you have to you have to design to your ideal customer, your ideal client, your ideal staff. And so that is kind of part of that whole
movement,
enjoyment in life. I know my kids like it darker than I do too, but I've gotten older and I need more light. So maybe that also. So
I do find myself selling the younger ones too. Why is it so dark in here? Because I need to turn some more lights on.
Yeah.
Even though I work in the dark.
I don't know why. I don't know. I just feel like we have this like big old nice space, and then like all the lights are off, and it's like, well, what the heck's the point?
can't
Like
even
we're not
see
even
it.
showing
Yeah.
it off. Can't even see it. We're not even showing it off. And for me, I don't know. There's something about the fact that it looks closed. So my background before
that's
opening
not
this
good.
company was Apple, and Apple was like a lightly,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Brightly
lit.
lit.
Brightly lit space.
I was trying to say that.
Mhm.
Brightly
Yeah,
lit
you
space.
got it.
Yes.
I was with you.
Thanks for following. So
Yeah.
it was just like a big difference going from that to like where everybody in here are like a bunch of like, like bats. Like they want the lights out, and I'm just like, oh, this drives me nuts.
Well,
so I will say we've found some compromise. Like
Yeah.
they told me that we can have the middle hallway light on, we can have the back one on, that we cannot have the very front one on because they feel like it's too bright. They're just like, maybe though, it's like as simple as switching out the hue of the light bulbs we have. Like if they were a softer hue of a bulb, would everybody be happier? Is it just that it's
That's
too bright
possible.
of a white color?
That's possible. That's
So weird.
But you said you're already
There's
doing
so many things.
You're already doing lamps and things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have lamps in that office. Overall in the space, we don't have enough lamp. Like I don't think lamps. We have one lamp in that room and one lamp. No, that might be the only lamp in the office is that lamp.
What about your lobby when people
There's-
walk in?
The lobby, they like to have the main overhead LED lights off. We have a neon light on the
It
wall
makes
and
the
a
neon
TV on
pop.
the wall.
Yeah.
So we have like kind of a neon. It does make the neon stand out a lot better. And then we have like some sconces on the wall, like two like little lights on the wall. Those will always stay on because they're super like soft. They don't put too much light off, but they always want the overhead lights off. It's very interesting.
I'm thinking wattage might help there.
Also like a dimmer. Like maybe that's
Yeah.
like another answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyways,
Or
it's not supposed to be a design consultation. I just think it's fascinating.
No. It's somewhere in between. Yeah, somewhere in between. Because you're and you once again, who is your ideal customer, and what did they need to feel like when they walk into that lobby, or where you're going to be meeting with them or something. And
what do they feel like about it? Yeah, I need to ask that question. Like, hey, what? Like maybe especially once we do start working with them, it's like, hey, what was your first impression when you first walked into our office space for the very first time?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often would you say you need to update and freshen up your space to stay relevant and to stay on top of good, not just trends, but also to keep the space fresh?
So in the design world, in the physical design world, I know in the marketing design world, it's even faster, but in the physical design world, meaning, well, even clothing and furniture and finishes and all of those things, they cycle about every 7 years. I know in the digital world, I've been told it's faster, right?
Oh, yeah, like every two to 3. Yeah.
2 or 3 years. But I know in the physical world, that's historically the cycle of things dating through, through patterns and colors and styles and all of those things. So, you can design so that things can last maybe 10 years. That's kind of a goal, and have a little bit less trendy. The more trendy, the faster they date, just like in marketing. And maybe that's why marketing dates so fast, because it does tend to always want to be the cutting edge and trendy. In office spaces, though, because of the expense, not that redesigning a website's not expensive. My goodness, I just did that this year. Oh my goodness. But the point is that the office space, it's expensive. And especially if you buy quality, commercial furniture is meant to last 20 years. What's going to date faster than it wears out? Good quality carpet is 10 to 15 years. So it's going to date faster than it wears out, which is okay. You want it to date faster than it wears out. You don't want it to be worn out and still not dated. So that's what you do. You buy residential furniture. The furniture wears out, but it's still within the undated level. So you got to find a space in between that.
Yeah.
And if you do want to do something trendy, we tell people, if you want to do something trendy and, whatever that is, I know there was a period of time where barnwood was everywhere, it was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And, it's like, hey, that, and it still matches some people's decor, it still matches what they want. They want to be in the country. They want to feel something, but that decor if you spend too much money on it, then you're kind of stuck with it. So how do you get enough of it that you can be a little bit trendy and then you replace it? Because the trendy things probably need to replace every 5 years.
Yeah.
Does that help?
That's a really good
Did that
point.
answer
Like,
your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 'cause I mean, I think there's like, that's a good one to bring up, was like the barn doors and like that wood kind of wood grain look. Same thing with like shiplap, because of Chip and Joanne Gaines. Like that's so trendy. You know, it's like, when should you follow trends versus when should you try to be more timeless? I like the idea of trying to use those items sparingly. Like you said, it's like, you didn't do your whole space like that. So like now you got to remodel the whole dang place. If you did just a door or a wall, it's like, okay, well, that's manageable if we want to upgrade or change that out. But
it's, you know, you're talking about the shiplap. Let me just bring that up. We still have clients that really want shiplap. They want that look.
Yeah.
They want that, because in a, where something that's a little bit more classic. Do you follow me? Like you said, the Chip and Joanna Gaines is a little bit more classic. So it has a little bit more length to it, as opposed to, you know, some of the
other stuff. Yeah. That's like clearly.
Yeah. It's hard to, I wish that as a designer, we had a crystal ball of what's going to date and what's not.
I know.
It's
what's
really
next,
not
Exactly.
that easy. Yeah. So, it's,
what do you think? I mean, you've already kind of like alluded to like paint and lighting makes a huge difference. But what do you think are some other small things companies can do in their spaces to just like liven the space? Like, especially if maybe they are on more of a, I don't want to say everyone's on a budget, but like for me, for example, like I don't have a fortune to spend on changing our space. It's a brand new space. But like, I also feel like we moved in 2 years ago. Most of my, well, that's not, I was about to say most of my staff is dudes. It's a split team now. We have 3 guys, 3 girls. But I feel like we kind of just like, we didn't hire anybody professionally. We kind of just figured out on our own how to make the space look cool. But now I'm like, okay, it looks good. Everyone compliments it. But what could we do to like really elevate it with small details? What could you make any suggestions around that?
so look at, well, first off, make sure you don't have any, 2 years ago, you probably don't have anything.
Yeah, 2 years.
That's especially dated at this point. You probably.
Yeah, no, not yet.
So that the free resource that I'm giving you the link to and stuff, we call it our 5-point designer checklist. And that's the goal of that. And it's interesting that one of you said this earlier, that you asked your clients, ask somebody you trust to walk through with you and get their opinion, because you live in it so much, you don't see it. Do you know?
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things that we tell people is just make sure it's clean, because you were talking about the dirty tiles and things, and I was talking about this little Thai restaurant. It's just cluttered. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just cluttered. Yeah. I don't know. Every single artifact they ever could find from Taiwan, they've put somewhere, and it's just busy and cluttered, and, you know, and it's incongruent. So, having someone come through and just give you some critique on that. So clean, decluttering is huge. Yeah. We don't realize it. So simplicity is always more appealing to your mind. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. As opposed to a lot of things. So I know as in the decorating world and the designer world, if you have a lot of little trinkets and a lot of little things, especially in a residential home that you want to display, you want to group them so they almost appear as if they're one. Do you follow what I'm saying? Or if you have a lot of photographs and a lot of pictures, you want to put them in a palette on the wall so it appears more as one thought. So that's kind of a thing. Just not like you stick them all and you put them together. We call them groupings in the design world. And it helps your mind not be overwhelmed, because being overwhelmed in a space is a negative thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, hardcore. You brought that up earlier, and I was like, I kind of like laughed for a second, because I was like thinking, you had said your brain's taking all of these distractions in, you might not even realize it. And I laughed because I thought about the fact that like every time there's like I don't know where I'm going and I'm looking at my GPS, I always turn my radio down to figure out where I'm going. And it's like, turning my radio down did nothing, you know, to change where I'm going. But that distraction wasn't allowing me to focus. And like, it's so funny. I thought of the kind of the exact same thing. It's like, I know as soon as we get off this call, I'm cleaning my desk, because It's, like
feeling
those, I'm like, oh God, she's talking about me. She can see more than my face. I think that is so, so important. I mean, just the other day I'd gone into one of our cabinets that like has just like, it's kind of like our junk drawer, basically is our cabinets.
Yeah.
And there was just so much garbage in there. And I was like, we don't even need half of this stuff. Like, why are we just starting to like, keep it and like, just get rid of it? Like, I don't need it. I don't care about it. Just get rid of it. But you're exactly right. Like, I feel like there's these little details that we don't think we see as a whole, but they're all still being processed somewhere in our brain. And it's all adding up to like, oh, I didn't really like that space. I don't know why necessarily, but that's exactly what it is. There's cables everywhere. There's 3 bottles of water. There's sticky notes on everything. It's like, okay, consolidate. The groupings one is also another one that I'm like, I'm going to walk up to the lobby when we're off this call and like look at stuff. We have these 2 like built-in bookshelves that have like little promotional products and print items we do, but they're literally just like,
it's kind of
everywhere. It's just around books and around whatever. It's just like, that's no one's looking at that stuff because they don't know what to look at.
Very much so. Yeah. So how can you group it so it becomes almost a display of sorts, like a presentation together of just in simplifying in that way, not like you only have one promotion, but
sure, yeah.
Yeah, but that you have to, so that, and then, we talked about dated already, and we talked about lighting.
Yep.
And one of the things that will date very quickly is color. So you just need to make sure that your colors are fresh and stuff. You were talking also about, when you use Apple as an example, I mean, they're just incredible design. Everything they do is just, and we buy because of the design, right? We buy for that.
Yep.
But the simplicity of it, simplicity. And that was, and, as we compare that to the Hollister that was really crowded and dark and all that kind of stuff, that was appealing to that generation for some reason. Do you know? I mean,
so weird, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, I know we spent a lot of money there. It was like very appealing.
Yeah.
So it's just finding that, like you said, the generation, the things. But those I'm kind of going into the 5 things. None of those cost a lot of money. Mostly it's just your own, your own stuff. But if things are worn out and they're torn and they're ripped, and you mentioned that one earlier, that's just the bad impression, Yeah,
it's just tacky.
Just tacky.
Yeah.
Another thing that we talk to our doctors about is go make sure your bathroom is spit spot clean. Spit spot clean.
Yep.
Every little crack. Just because when people, it's just that impression that this is not cared for, So if I'm not caring for this, are they going to care for me? It's weird psychology. So we don't know what they'll think, but you always want to put your best, but you never make another chance to, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. Like I'm so quiet and kind of dumbfounded right now because I'm just like thinking about how many spaces I've been in where I have a negative feeling, but I'm not always sure exactly why. And like now I'm like thinking through like, okay, what were the things that I saw? Like I was in a print shop recently and there was like, first of all, it was just like the guy's junk was everywhere. And like that annoyed me just immediately. So it was like, cool, those are your hobbies. That's fun. Like if you had a few of them, it would be one thing, but it's just everywhere. So it just looks tacky. And then the next thing was there was like trash on the floor, like the carpet had stains, and it was just like, this place looks disgusting. Like I can't say it any other way. Like it doesn't look like you care about your business. And again, like you said, you realize not every company is going to have people coming in, but at least those common spaces, that front lobby should look spectacular. If what is behind that door that no one sees looks like trash and you are cool with that and you can thrive in that environment, then by all means. But what the customer sees and feels should always be like top notch. And I remember being in that print shop and just being like, oh, so like even me in my office, like if I see like a little piece of speck of paper on the floor, I'm like, nope. Like I'll tell the team like, hey, like if you see it, just grab it. Like it's something small, but like, I don't know why it drives me nuts. Totally does.
Well, it's just
I wanted to ask one more.
You start to, that's why we say have someone else come through with you and ideally that person that walks through with you is your ideal avatar, right?
Yeah.
And they'll also be straightforward and honest with you. So that's kind of hard to find both, but if you can, that's ideal.
Yeah.
But because we tolerate things. So, we tolerate things. So
I do have one more question, and you've kind of talked about this a little bit, but I really want to kind of bring it home because I think it really encompasses this whole conversation. But how much would you say space ties directly to sales and retention?
I think it's hard to measure exactly, but it's all that psychology that we've been talking about. I think it's directly related. We say the quality of your space is directly related to your success, which is retention of your clients, retention of your patients, attraction, all of this. And the function, it's got to function. So we can't forget that. So it's all very important. So I think it's 100% important, but of course I'm in the business.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I mean, again, I think my story I shared earlier, hopefully to someone speaks volumes. A year in our office space and we opted to buy the building because of how much we grew in that 1 year.
Yeah.
And it was because despite whether or not some of it was ego based or not, having a space that elevated our value and what we charged, it validated that. It offered credibility even beyond what we talked about ourselves and what our website said about us. When someone sees it in real life, there's just something to that. Like that, I can honestly say we've gotten so many clients from the fact that when they walked in the office, they were like, wow, like this is legit. Like this is a cool place, because they aren't thinking, oh, you guys are another Starbucks web designer. You guys are another, my cousin who creates logos. Like it's not that person. It's like, where are you at in your business? If you're ready to elevate your business, that's us.
There it is.
If you're still just getting started and you don't have a budget for marketing, and there's 1,000 different website builders, you can do it yourself. And we encourage you to do that. But when you're ready to like take it to the next level, generate more leads for your business, grow your company, that's when it's time to talk to us. And then whenever you walk into our space and you go, oh, okay, I see why you charge what you charge. You must be doing something right if you have a space like this. There's just something to that, They feel good. I feel good. It helps my confidence. I want to sell. I want to bring people into my space. I want to invite people to our podcast studio that we have built out in the back. Like, it's fun. It's fun to be here.
Wow. You just said it all. You just said it all because, and you said something. I just want to bring something back to you. It's not your ego. It's your image. Do you know what I'm saying? It's you. It's your image. You know that space needs to match up with how you portray your image, and then what we tell our clients. It's not necessarily where you are today. It's where you want to be too. Do you follow me? You've got to always, and I'm sure you do this with your marketing too. It's like you're promoting forward. That's how you. That's how you grow. So.
Yep.
Now in residential,
Carolyn, this conversation.
In residential,
totally different, right?
It's more ego. Yeah. And so that's why people associate it. And that's why I started by saying it's not a luxury. It's not. It's a part of, it's
marketing.
It's marketing.
Yeah.
It's marketing.
Well, especially in the holistic health space, because without a place to go, you're not going to do anything in that space. You got to have,
If you're a brick and mortar, it's part of your marketing expense and it's not just marketing new clients, it's keeping staff.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I feel like I could use you as a consultant for like tons and tons of hours to like make sure that our space is perfect, but that's not what this is about. I want to obviously tell your story, and this is right. Exactly. What can we do about this wall?
We do consultants. I'll walk around with you. We can do a FaceTime and I'll walk around and I'll give you my opinion, Andrew. There we go.
All right. Some text and advice. All right. I appreciate it. If you could leave us with one business growth hack, I'm going to play a sound effect. That'll give you some time to think about it. one thing that businesses can implement today in their business to maybe get more out of their space, maybe to make a greater impact on their customers, whatever it may be, I'll let you give it to us.
Hacks!
All right, Carolyn, what you got?
Well, I just am going to go back to what we've been talking about, is that really pay attention to your environment. That's my goal on getting on these podcasts, is to get people to be aware that your environment impacts your success and being aware of it. So
that's awesome. That's so cool. Hey, why don't you tell us who is your ideal avatar? Who are you going after? If somebody's listening to this show and they know somebody, or maybe they are that somebody, who are you looking to work with, and how can you help them?
Well, our ideal avatar, we are in the holistic healthcare space. We started out doing chiropractors only, and that has evolved because chiropractors are doing more than chiropractic. So we're doing more than chiropractic. So all kinds of recovery systems and med spa type spaces and wellness spaces, any space like that. And our ideal client is someone that understands that. They already understand it. We're not trying to sell them that your space is going to impact your success. They already understand it. This part is me telling them, but when they come to us, they already get it. Typically, our practitioners have been in business a little while and they're ready to go to that next level. We do work with startups and we get them started on how much space they need, et cetera. But we have a lot of, we do one-on-one services, but I also have a course for startups that I can promote if you want me to. We also have packages called Designed For You, which is kind of a already put together finished package going after a specific avatar. So we have sources to help anyone that has to do with starting a business. The course itself really is about the process of going through to open your office so that you're making that.
That's so cool. And by the way, you guys, and we do it
virtually.
I'm going to give her a little love.
All over the world.
It's virtual.
It's all virtual, so all over the world. Yes.
That's awesome. So it doesn't matter where they're located. You can still serve them.
Yes.
Yeah,
and we're full
I'll tell you
architects.
right now, her work is beautiful. Y'all's work is gorgeous. I'm not just saying that because she's a guest on our show. I'm telling you because I spent some time on her website, and their work not only looks beautiful, you can tell just by looking how much thought and care and functionality was put into these spaces. So if you are designing a space, especially in that arena, there's no one else you should be talking to. I don't know anybody else that does it as good as they do. So you might as well reach out to her.
Thank you.
And Carolyn has done an amazing job. She created a great resource for you guys if y'all want to check that out. It is crossfieldsdesign.com/listeners. She's got a 5-point designer checklist for you guys to help you evaluate your current office image. You can download that for free on her website. You can check out all that she's doing. We'll make sure to include that link in the show notes below. If you guys like this episode, share it with a friend. There's no way we can grow the show without you guys. And if you like this episode, leave us a review. Let us know what you think. We don't know if you like the show unless you tell us that you like the show. So, Carolyn, thanks again so much for being on the show. John, thank you, sir.
See you next week.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Business Growth Hacks Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. To get more marketing tips and tricks, follow Beefy Marketing on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Beefy Marketing. And to take your business to the next level, check out our website at www.beefymarketing.com.